by the time we get here, I always feel like like the first day was so long ago. You know, we cover so much ground and so many treatments. And I think yesterday's morning lab was really great. Thanks for suggesting that, and you know, just really going into the health, because that lab was extraordinary. Did anyone notice a difference in what the space in the room felt like with that lab compared to the first 2 days?
In the morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
More transparent. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like it was easier. The health was coming in.
Yeah. Good.
When I was on the table, it felt like it was. I felt the white light.
Yeah, yeah. What did that feel like?
Ah, but good.
Really?
Surprising, yeah?
Yeah. Good. That's fine. That's enough.
It was nice that in the lab was really good to do, because we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
But to actually do a lab just on that
Yeah.
was really good, because we might, we might see it in practice, but we would maybe recognize it as well.
Right.
When it's magnified like that, and the whole room was light. It was really nice.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the health is something that we're really, everything we do is oriented toward, but sometimes we need to really talk about it explicitly to make sure that we understand that all these other phenomena are really there to help us to build that relationship with the health.
They're really real when you feel them.
Yeah.
Like when I was first
Oh, they are.
doing the study, yes, but when I was doing the study first, I would say, you see the health, and I used to say, what's the health? and knowing that I wasn't probably ready to feel it or know what the answer was, but every single course, and what's the health? So when you get on and you start to tangibly feel it in some way, it becomes very, very real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does. That's good. So.
I put some in my bag.
Take some home.
Some gold in there.
So I'm good now.
I have a question about that, the health and the different landscapes. So, the way that the health felt in the lab that we did yesterday, is that the only time that we'll feel the health in that way because it was that moment in time? So then next time we might feel it in a different way?
It can definitely come in different forms at different times, but it doesn't mean that the way you felt it then will be the only time you feel it that way.
Right.
So whatever you felt in that lab, you may feel in other people as well, as the health and other treatments with that same character, but it also may take on a different character.
Right. Okay. And this was something I was thinking about when we were treating yesterday, in the afternoon, and that's to start, so you're starting with the health, and then another landscape appears that shows you something, whatever that is. I don't know how to, I can't even think of an explanation, like an example. I'm just saying, it shows you something else.
Mm-hmm.
But then I feel like, for me, I struggled yesterday with being like, oh, there's something else, but then still having the health there, because when that other thing shows up, the quality of the health, I either lose it, or it just disappears, or it's maybe it's another form that my brain is just not comprehending at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that question while we were treating, and I don't know if that's too abstract, but So then I was like, oh, did I lose the health? And then I would like look for what I had before, but then I kind of ignore what came to me.
Uh-huh.
And so then, yeah, I was like, is that the health? What's coming to me?
The void.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because the void and the health, the relationship with the health, you have the void. Because it has to be go to neutral and to, you know, so.
That's very helpful.
Yes.
Because I definitely felt like a panic. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get Steve Rivero. Like, I'm totally messing this up. What's going on? And I was like, okay, just wait.
And so I was
Just
here and
breathe.
I can hear and I say, can I, what's with the baby? I hear you, Shana, I cannot come.
I was like, I'm messing this up. This is your patient. Oh God. And then I just was like, okay, just chill out, just wait, just breathe, and then the health came back or something changed, and then it was easier to feel the whole again. But
So in the void you need to accept, like he said, the unresolved, you know, so the scary, the abandoned, you feel abandoned, there are nothing, you're alone,
there was like an empty space there. I was like, here I am with this patient, and we're just alone. I couldn't feel a baby. I couldn't feel dad anymore. I was like, here we are, just us by ourselves. Yeah.
So
Okay.
you describe the void.
Okay. Perfect. That's great.
Yeah. So that's a normal response to the void initially. That panic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, you know, that's why it's important to talk about, so we know that that's actually, you know, if you can convince yourself to just wait in there and not start, you know, because the first
I
thing.
totally did that. I
Yeah.
was like in my mind.
Yeah.
I was sitting there with a smile on my face,
Yeah.
quiet, and I was like, oh God, I'm inside.
And that's a natural thing, and you'll see yourself just do it without thinking about it. Your ego.
I totally
Try to
did
find
that.
something. What can I find?
Yes.
Because in the void, there's no sensation. There's just emptiness.
And then I got up out of the treatment, and I was like, man, that was stressful. Like, I was done, and I was like,
Yeah.
Après, ça a changé.
Yeah.
donc
So
elle-
is the
elle
ego
était
and
tout à
void
fait
the
en
same
panique.
thing?
No, so in the void, the ego gets scared,
Uh-huh.
and so the gorilla comes out, and he's like, right, and so if you succumb to the ego's wants, and you allow that fear, that uncertainty, and the searching to take you over, then it's like panic,
Okay.
and then
So that's
you know,
the ego,
yeah, and then you can't see or feel anything because you're too busy trying to do something, but there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
You're too busy trying to feel something, there's nothing to feel.
So the void is when you come in face with the ego.
Well, the void will reveal the ego to us,
To us.
and the ego will
React accordingly,
React,
or whatever.
right?
Yes.
but the thing to understand is the ego is not you,
Yes.
okay?
No.
So it's your response to the ego. So the ego is going to do that,
Yes.
and it's your response to that happens. It's going to determine
Where we go.
where it's going,
Yeah.
what's going to happen next.
Okay.
And so if you're calm in that space and the ego's going, it's going to, over time, because the ego only has power if you pay attention to it. If you don't pay attention to it, it'll go,
Not that fast. That's
No,
why
not
I-
that way. She's right, but over time, it happens more quickly. Over time.
You gifted.
Yeah, well.
He's got
But again, she's right in that even if it starts to happen more quickly, there'll be certain times where it's just like a struggle again, right? Because we're human and we fall into
Mhm.
our old habits and our
So
old.
the struggles that we feel, even like the doubts and stuff, that's the ego, right? That's not the void.
Mm.
Okay.
But the void it leaves a space for that to,
Yeah.
It's okay to bubble up.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why for me, to know that perfection is there, that the head is always there, that's, you know, so when you are like that,
It's okay.
then you say, I know the head is there, so I want this communication, you know,
Yes.
so I stay the
Settle.
best, so with this little thing, not react it,
Yes.
so it can be a little, you say, I stay calm,
Yes.
you know, then that's what he says, so then if you stay without reacting, the resolving is quick.
Yes.
I can maybe share from my perspective because I was in the same treatment. And I was with the central stomas of the baby that had not synced up to the central stomas of the dad or the mom. And as I was waiting for that, I was somewhat hanging out with the process in the baby and somewhat hanging out with the help in the room. And at a certain moment, I looked at Shayna and she was just like she described, she was like frozen. As whereas before she was like contributing to the health in the room and the connection there. And we had a moment of just, I recognized what was going on in her, and I just took a step back and re-established that connection with the health in the room for myself. And then I felt her join in again. And then the process moved, and that's quickly before all the three people from the family synced up.
So I want to thank you both because now I think I have the permission. So the ovum is not from the mother and the sperm is not from the father. So that, but I could not tell you that before, but it's a huge service because did you see the, so
Maybe that's why I wasn't synced before.
That makes a lot more sense now. It's okay.
yes, but I was asking them if I can.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you see, so the tie put together,
Yeah. That makes a lot more sense now.
so it's scary.
Yeah. But it was good, it was such a good learning experience, and like at that time, at that way with the moment Dominic said, it was like something like just was like, look at Dominic, and I did, and then our eyes met, and then I was like, it's okay. And then it was able to like, cause he was with the health at that time, and then I was like, oh, it's okay. And then it started moving again. It was very interesting.
So thank you.
Thank you. No. And I think that was such a good learning experience for the void, because before I thought, oh well, I was under the impression that when you're treating and you just don't feel anything, that must be the void. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I think there was such a difference in palpating the health and then all of a sudden sliding, and it was really like sliding between two, like if there's a landscape here and a landscape here, it was literally being in between the landscapes, and there was nothing there. And I was like, wow, there is an empty space here. And it was like, it wasn't even, it was just as if you had a window open and you, like, but there's nothing going, there's no breeze, and you're just sitting there and you're like, wow, what's going on? Like, there's nothing there. And that's very different than quote unquote not feeling anything in the treatment.
Yeah.
It is something. It's a very much nothing. And then, yeah, so that for me was like a very good learning experience, and I totally freaked out. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying that.
It helps because we all have the same experience.
Yeah. So now I'll know the next time, because I think before, whenever that void came up, I just fell asleep. Because every time we did the void, bam, I was out. Like when we worked together, I just fell asleep like immediately.
We're avoiding the void.
Self-preservation.
Yeah. I wasn't ready for that.
But it's true. It's important that we know that we all have that, so that when we're there, we know we actually have company in each other.
Yeah.
You know, and it's okay. And you know, that's where Jim, he talks a lot about feeling the help even when you can't feel the help. It's like I can't feel it. I'm in this place where I can't feel anything, but I can still feel it. Right? There's something in me, and that's what I feel like when Vero's talking about it. She's like, I can't feel anything, but I know it's there. So I'm gonna wait. And so she knows it's there, but there's something inside of her that is like just could sense it. You know, it's more than like I'm trusting it's there. It's like I know it's there. And there's something in me that feels it, but I can't feel it. But I'm gonna feel it anyway. And you just wait.
In the monastery, the monk who are in silence and solitude, when they have that, they stay like that on the ground 3 days sometimes until the light comes. So they stay in the nothingness, not moving, until something ignites again. So it's in your condition, it's normal.
Yeah. Very helpful. It was very helpful. Yeah. And then I think the lab before was just nice to have that base. It was like the base to come back to.
It can be the dark light of St. John of the Cross.
Yeah.
Because it is our first big fear is to be alone. And when we meet that, it is really scary.
Mm-hmm.
But something, the light comes after
Yeah.
that.
Until we realize that we're never really alone.
Yeah.
And that's what, really transmutates the void, is when you start to realize that you're not actually alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's when I looked at Dominic and I was like, oh, there.
Yeah.
It's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And then I just breathed in and it just.
Because he's feeling the help, and so it's coming through him, and okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also, it was also another difference between the nothingness and the void. There's definitely a huge difference, and that was, so then the void was the void being void of anything, but the nothingness is not nothing, it's almost like, it's everything but nothing.
Yeah. It is the nothingness.
Yeah,
The void's
there's nothing,
the
Yeah.
void.
yeah, right, so there are two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really also another, I thought I felt the nothingness before, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it was. And I wondered whether people were getting the nothingness and the void confused. But I don't think I really had a conscious feeling of the void, because I just always fell asleep. Like, every time. Even when I was treating by myself, fell asleep.
But Jim described, different, it's like you have different landscape, and so you have different type of void.
Mm.
Yeah. So maybe that was just
And
one
it's a
time.
void, maybe the third void, maybe just before the nothingness.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we can help pregnancy, to reconnect.
Yeah.
I think,
That makes sense.
That's where you can help what?
Pregnancy.
when women cannot be pregnant,
Oh.
Infertility.
infertility,
Yeah.
if you stay with the third void before the nothingness, some connection can happen because you stay there
Mm-hmm.
for them.
Uh-huh.
So you don't see it, but
Yeah.
people see things. Christina Steele,
Yeah.
she talked about that.
Yeah.
That's what she was trying to share with
Yeah.
us. I understand that. What do you think, Nadine? What do you think?
I was not knowing that what you said just now.
Because Fiona was in and so we had infertility woman start since 10 years, and so suddenly we were in that place, and then suddenly it was a little light, but not so you
Of course, that changed my life. I'm serious. That was amazing.
and then she
really
get
did.
pregnant 3 months.
Wow. So you go to the void, the third void, just
behind,
behind nothingness.
but just before the thing.
Before.
You have
Okay.
void.
Yes. You reconnect.
Then
No,
you
you
just
don't.
stay
You
there.
do nothing.
Nothing. You are just in a service of biosynchronization. It's a matter, for me, it's a matter of synchronization, because it's polyrhythmic, everything is there.
Mm-hmm.
It depends the moment, that's the shelter, zone C are going to give you, put you there, and then you have this clarity of, and so you're in the service, you're at
Yeah.
the fulcrum, not the fulcrum, what did you say, le point d'appui. So you're there, so it can happen, it's like
So
the
point of
thing-
view.
Point of balance.
the principle of if you can see the real midline and the false midline, just because you see it
Yeah.
goes at the same time, they can remember
Mhm.
that they are one. So
Mhm.
it's the same principle.
And that real feeling of like being will-less, like absolutely neutral, and you sit there and you're seeing this or you're feeling this happen, and for me, it was like the first time I'd ever seen or felt anything like that, and I was just like, whoa. And I realized that we really aren't doing anything, and there's nothing you can do, but we were doing something by being present.
Yeah.
Being present.
Yeah.
Witness.
And that, so that it wouldn't have happened without the presence of us, but we weren't doing it. And that it was like a real, like, I really felt power, like when he says you lose all will, you really do, because you realize that it's such a much a bigger process than, yeah, it was just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the more neutrality that you have, the less that you end up needing to do or doing.
I mean, there really
And the
isn't.
more
like,
powerful the
you
treatment
can't
comes in.
Yeah. You wouldn't even think about doing anything because that was so grand. It was so amazing that there's just no way you could even be a fraction of what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting involved.
Yeah. So we're there. So I thought it might be helpful just to step back and without all our words, just look at our journey. Right. And we had talked about the human world, the natural world, and the supernatural, the divine world. And sometimes Jim just calls this heaven. Right? It's ocean heaven. So there's the voids that exist in the natural world, right? And then there's another void that exists in the supernatural world. Okay? And so the voids that exist in the natural world, we see, the first time we meet it, just to review from day one, we meet at, when the fluid body goes to neutral, right? And we need to wait at that second level stillness. Is it second level? I can't remember. Doesn't really matter.
Yes, it is. Because
It's-
the
yeah.
first is
So we wait at that second level stillness, right, for automatic shifting to happen. And so we need to have the discipline to just wait there while nothing's happening long enough for the first real treatment to start to come in and start to happen, right? And that's at the end of phase 2. And so that's when we first start to meet our own willpower, right? And we realize how much willpower we have that we want to do, but we need to not do, right? And so it takes a while for that to kind of dissolve. And there's there's a lot of uncertainty there. There's a lot of frustration there. There's a lot of self-criticism and self-doubt. There's not necessarily a lot of fear because the space isn't big enough yet for us to drop into that. Sometimes there is, but it's more ourselves that we're dealing with, right? And our superficial stuff. And then as that dissolves and dissolves and dissolves, we're able to sit there long enough for the automatic shifting to kind of come in, right, and start to work. And then we meet the long tide in the natural world, right? And it feels wonderful, and it feels great, and it's nurturing, and it fills us with a sense of peace and love and oneness, and it's like this great whole new world that we pass into. And we start to be able to observe all these things that we talked about as the therapeutic effects. And then when we go to the fulcrum of the long tide, right, we drop over the horizon from which it comes, and we drop into the emptiness of the dynamic stillness for the first time, a lot of times that void brings out a lot of the fear because it's so vast, it's endless, it's boundless, it's scary. We lose a reference point because when we drop into here, none of the stuff that we're relating to exists anymore, right? And so we lose our reference point, we lose anything we've ever felt before. We start to feel our smallness and our aloneness, right? Because we no longer, we don't feel the help coming through the darkness yet. St. John of the Cross, right? And this is the void that Jim talks about at the interface between the natural and supernatural world. That is the most difficult one, right? It's the one that brings the most fear. But if we are able to stay there and tolerate that, then the stillness, right, that's coming in, right, third level minimum, has the capacity to change that, right? And over time it dissolves our willpower, it dissolves our intention, it dissolves our fear, it dissolves the uncertainty, and so we are able to become neutral enough in that to be brought into, further into the supernatural.
It is quite changing the goal of your life when you go through that.
Yeah, yeah. Your whole perspective on life changes.
Yes.
Because this world is self-fulfilling. We get filled, right? And as we pass into here, this world is self-emptying. We become empty, and more empty, and more empty, and more empty. And Jim talks about you lose your personality, right? You lose your sense of meaning of life. You lose a sense of any meaning of anything. Everything becomes meaningless as you enter the void just before the nothingness, right? And so these voids are in the natural world, and they help us to dissolve our unresolve and our fear and our preconceptions and our ego and our willpower and everything. And I think like Shana may have seen a little bit, this is where the Hydra comes, right? The Hydra, which is, what's that from?
The many-headed snake.
Yeah, the many-headed snake, right? It's like, right? And it's the many-headed snake. So it's like it has all these heads, right? And it's just fear, right? And Hercules tries to use his sword to cut the head off, and then what happens? 2 more grow, right? And so if we fight with this thing, it gets bigger and bigger and louder, right? And that's why neutrality is so important, because if we react to it, the Hydra gets bigger, right? And starts to rule everything that we do, because we're stuck in this relationship of fear and protection and isolation and everything, right? But if we are able to have neutrality and just wait and listen, right? What transforms the Hydra is fire. It comes in and burns it up. It transmutates us, right? And so the unresolved that's still left in us by the time we reach this area gets transmutated. It resolves.
So it doesn't happen many times, sure doesn't? Or does it?
It can.
You know, I had this experience once and it was for quite some time, but and then I think maybe I was avoiding the void because it didn't happen again. But maybe it's just that it's more that you become more at ease with the
Yes. Yeah.
But it can happen many times.
Because we're human.
Yes,
So
I know what you mean, yes, but it happens differently.
It does happen differently.
Yes.
Yeah. So the more you come to that and have the courage to actually face it directly and see it and acknowledge it and not respond to it,
The difference,
the next time it comes, it won't have as much power and presence, and it won't have as much, and it won't have as much. But then it becomes easier. But, and I know what you're doing, but then all of a sudden you go there and it's bigger than it ever was.
Okay. Okay,
right? And so you're not just back to where you were, but you're 10 steps backward,
Mhm.
right?
okay,
Because we're human,
yes,
and so we fall
yes,
multiple times,
yes,
right? We're given this grace, we're given this perfection. All of a sudden, we enter into this world, and the health is everywhere, and we're moving throughout life with grace, and you're just kind of watching yourself, and all this goodness is happening. And all of a sudden, one day you wake up, and you're back in you're all your crap, right?
so it kind of takes courage to go into the void.
It does. It does.
You have to sit and fall.
You have to sit and fall. And in that falling, allowing yourself to fall to pieces,
Yeah, yeah.
right? I mean, really just like you
Yeah.
feel like you're a complete failure.
Yeah, you can't literally avoid the void. You can sort of step away from it rather than falling into it.
You can, but you won't. You
Yes,
won't be.
yes,
You won't be brought in.
yeah,
Right. So we have to have the courage to fall to nothing, so that
yes.
something else can reemerge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the ego, will it's sneaky, right? And it will slowly build and it will slowly convince you that you're in power here and you can go, and so you try and you fool yourself, and you start to think that you can do it on your own. I'm going to feel this third level stillness, I'm going to hold on to it, right? But it's not it. It's just your imagination, and all of a sudden you realize what you're doing, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh shit.
Again.
And maybe you've been doing that for like 6
For
months
years.
or years, yeah.
I've been pretending that's years.
Yeah. But even after you're brought into the grace and you're through all that, you're gonna have times in your life where you're gonna catch yourself there again, and you say, oh shit, like I've been doing it again.
But then it must be great to be able to just sit and slip into the void so that
Yeah.
you reorganize your.
It is, but it takes discipline and the capacity to face all of your inadequacies again,
Okay.
like they were for the first time.
Also never give up.
Yeah.
Never give up.
Never give up, yeah.
When you give up. Just gently.
Go, when you fall over there,
But it's having the courage
You
to fall,
have-
I think, is the
you
hard
have to
part.
Yeah.
go back again to that voice to meet it, go
But I
there
don't know
again.
that, it's not like you choose to go to the void.
Yes.
No.
No, it's not like you kind of say, oh, I'll have another regroup.
But when you fall into it, having the courage to just
Okay, so you're kind of taking to it, and then
Yeah.
it's how you react to it.
Right.
Okay.
right.
The reaction, that what I find is that when you have a reaction, you can bring that reaction back to the silence. That's why the silence for me is so useful,
Okay.
because sometimes in
Yes.
between human beings, it's like you cannot stand it. So you say, okay, the silence is there, and you can retreat that reaction in the silence and wait long enough, sometimes 3 days. Beauty,
Yes,
a doorway open that you could not imagine.
yes. Okay.
What I did so many times, I think, is going back to this natural world, because it felt good, it was nice, it was so wow. So I said, no, here it's not okay. I'm not at the right place, and so I tried to find something what I know. So I was always slipping back all the time to go to the natural world because, well, it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Happens, yes.
It's self-fulfilling. It feels good. Yeah. And that's okay. And it's nurturing.
So
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. I worked with this group in Austria, which they're just so wonderful because they've been osteopaths for so long, and they get it really quickly. And when I got there and I started trying to figure out where they are, or what they know, or what I can even teach them, and all they would talk about was stillness, right? They were completely addicted to stillness, which I could relate to completely, because I lived most of my life addicted to stillness. And so I started to talk to them about, you know, what's before stillness, right? And so naturally we went into the nothingness, right? So for 3 days we went to nothingness, and this one, and it's on this nice lake, so afterward you go out and it's all the nature, and it's all right there, right? So when you work in the natural world and you walk into that, it just like, it's so radiant, it feels great. And she was kind of standing out there by the lake for a while. I was going for a little walk on one of our breaks. I come back, and you know, you could tell she's in this real contemplative processing place. And she's like, she comes up to me and she says, you know, when I work with the stillness and I come out here, it just feels great. Everything feels so wonderful, you know, and radiant and present. She's like, but since we've been working with the nothingness, I come out here and I have no response to it.
Can you say it again?
I have no. So when she's working with the stillness in the natural world, and she goes out into, you know, we go out by the lake and the mountains and everything, and it's like the beauty of it. It's vibrant, and she's filled and she loves it. That's what brings her there. But we're working with the nothingness for a couple of days straight, just nothing. Right? You walk past the stillness, past the silence, before any of that, and just the nothingness. And she's out there in the same place, and she's looking around, and afterwards she comes and says, you know, now I come out here, and I don't feel anything. Right? There's no more beauty. There's no more vibrance. Right? Because it's empty. Because it's the emptiness that we relate to. And it was interesting because you know, she's going through this other transition. You know, she's entering into the other void, where there is nothing. Right? So she's not scared. She's not facing her own fears anymore. She's just facing the reality that in the last void, there's no sensory experience. There's emptiness. And there's meaninglessness. So nothing has meaning. In this world, everything is meaning. Things feel like they have meaning. But in the void, in the last void, in the nothing, there's no meaning anymore. There's meaninglessness. There's emptiness. Nothing is existing. There's just non-existence. So you disappear completely. Your personality disappears.
So there are 3 voids.
We can say that.
Distinctly,
Yeah. Or we can say that this void and this void are really
A little void.
in the natural world, and we just meet it in different places. But there is a different void. It's in the supernatural world.
Can you say that again in between the two middle?
So these 2 voids are transition periods as we go from one landscape to another. But they both exist in the natural world. Okay? Whereas the 3rd void, the one that Vero's speaking about, is in the supernatural.
And there's no fear surely in the 3rd void.
The 3rd,
For me,
yeah, go
the
ahead.
3rd one is difficult. Because I don't think we cannot go there.
It's the veil.
It's a way and we can, you know, I don't know, it's you know, it's the like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like,
Yes. But yes, I know, now I think I know the answer. Now that, that's because I was thinking what it's in. The supernatural, there can't be fear. In like, what is this the space between?
Right. Right.
it's the space between.
Is the space between?
Yeah. Just like Shana was saying, it's like the space between those 2 worlds.
Yes.
Right? It's vast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this little space, but you drop in there.
But probably it's pure love in the heaven. So I think it's sometimes we can touch it.
Yes, but the human beings are afraid to be touched by real love. We are scared, you know.
This is true. This is the problem.
Yeah, that's our difficulty.
But it's part of the world of the
It's part of.
yeah, of the
Yeah.
world.
Yes. say it's a conversion, and then you see that you do move from your house, but it's totally a new world. Things like that.
Can you say a word on like where you put the nothingness in and like some basic nothingness introduction? You just use the term as if everybody would know, but I
Yeah.
really don't know.
Yeah.
You know nothing?
And I would just, I think my mind would just feel happy if you could put a few things around there.
Yeah.
Don't.
Okay.
No, it's just be careful because the mind cannot understand that. You can do it, but just be careful because it's not it's paradoxal. It's another world. So you cannot understand. It's
It's
like,
beyond words.
yes.
Well, you're using the word to describe a certain something, and I have not yet any idea in which direction you're pointing, and I think that therefore it will be kind of nice to hear your thoughts and feelings on it.
It's a perceptual experiment.
Experience.
Experience.
I understand that, but I don't have, like all the other terms, they kind of have a certain meaning and a place for me, and the nothingness just kind of stands totally apart from that in my experience so far, and I'm longing to get some kind of explanation where you
Okay.
all put that in your conceptual
Okay.
something.
Part of existence, existence. Yeah. You want to say?
It's just, you know, when you are you just do something, you don't have thing. It's that through the nothingness, action come, and you are put it in action. So it's an existence in the moment, and before you are in the nothingness, you can be used by it, and it's an existence. Does that make sense?
Not yet.
So
That's
he-
fine.
He will explain.
Is that different than a neutral then? Because what you just explained is, I would,
It's a sort of neutral nothingness. Yes, it's nothing.
There's different than a neutral that we've ever had before, right? So it's not existence. It's where nothing is existing. So there's nothing there. There's nothing to relate to. There's nothing to sense. There's nothing to trust. There's nothing that you recognize. There's neither a boundary nor is there no boundary. It's just non-existence. It doesn't exist. Right? And so there's nothing. There's absolutely zero sensory experience.
Then
Okay.
it gets confusing from void again.
Yeah. And so, but yet, it's a substance
Yeah, that's the difference, is that it's a substance.
that suspends everything.
Yeah.
So everything's suspended in this non-existence. What doesn't exist. What's not happening. Okay? And so, what Dr. Jello said, it's the only place where God's will can operate. Because there's nothing there. So it's free. And what Vero's saying is that when something happens, right, and if you're in non-existence, and you're not existing, and you don't care, it's because there's nothing to care about. There's nothing happening, so there's no cause for anything. It's acausal. But then all of a sudden, something's moving through the nothingness, right? And because you've disappeared into it and dematerialized into it, it moves you too, because you don't exist. And then it comes out of non-existence into existence. Okay? happens and then it dissolves back into non-existence,
Mhm.
and it no longer exists.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? So it dissolves back into where it came from. It didn't come from anywhere.
This is life.
That's the incarnating moment.
Because it's, what's that?
That's the incarnating moment.
Yeah, yeah. So incarnation happens,
Yeah.
right? And it dissolves back into this nothingness, which is everywhere, which is suspending everything. It's a substance, but when you're there, you completely dissolve, and it feels completely meaningless. There's no meaning there. There's no intention there. There's nothing.
But it's very clear at the same time. The light is there.
The uncreated light.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The
Right?
possible,
So it's not there. It's the uncreated light.
the possibility of light.
It's
Yeah.
it's never a state you can look for.
So the light comes into existence and comes into light, but it's in non-existence. It's the uncreated. It's not yet
Mhm. But there.
created.
Anyway, if the light is there, you cannot sense it. You cannot.
Yeah, there's nothing to sense.
Right.
You cannot see it. If the light is there.
And that's the nothingness, the non-existence. That's the similar, it's a synonymous term you're using.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
And is that kind of like the background
This
fabric?
is dynamic,
or
this place.
a process in the background that's happening the whole time?
But there's nothing happening.
Then why are we using it? Why do we even care about it?
Because you know when Rolling Becker and the old osteopaths say turn the light on. That's where for children they can have a free body or breathing and that, but no, they are not. The light is not on, so no technique. So they just say okay, turn the light on. So it's through this landscape that you can
Okay.
turn the light on. So no technique. So.
What I would like to say maybe is that you cannot think that you are that you can decide anything about this state. This is something that you get, but no, you cannot decide anything about it. And I found that Stephen described very well what was in it. But you can not look for, you see what I mean? This is something coming to you, and when you have experienced that, you can put words on it. But if you haven't, then you can just listen and say, oh, this looks strange, but it will happen.
I just don't have any. I understand the concept. That's all fine, but I have no idea where to place the concept into what we have done so far. And that's the missing link for me. I
Like,
really.
what's the point?
No, it's like I'm.
An evolution in the states of neutral. So that
Yeah.
you become part of the substance
Of what doesn't exist.
of what doesn't
Mhm.
exist.
Yeah, this was well done.
So it's not going to be something your rational mind is going to accept.
That's true.
But I think we didn't explore that. We didn't have a lab on that.
No.
So we didn't, it was not manifesting in those 3 days. So we don't have this experiment in those 3 days. Because we talk about the void. So some of here people had experiment in the office, so that's why we talk about it. But in those 3 days we were not there. It was not manifesting.
Okay.
Because it's an experiment.
Experiences.
So when it's going to come to you, because the tide knows what she's doing. So the primal respiration you're going to have it one day for sure. But we don't know when, because we cannot create that. You know, it's just suddenly you are lifted, and then it's so close of natural. So I said, I was always there. Naturally I was there. So sometimes it's so close to you that you forget, because it's so simple.
Okay.
Mhm.
And when you
are in it, you say, but this is so simple, and it will be for for always, but it disappears.
But when you're in it, you don't even have those thoughts anymore. They don't exist. You don't start thinking, oh, I'm glad I'm here, or even that I'm here. 'Cause
And you know you're not there.
Right.
Yeah.
So, when we're here, right, before we fall into the nothingness, and we're in that place of where fears come up, Jim says that we can either run away or stay and pray for help, right? And so the help is what comes. But when you're in non-existence, and this is also where we started to say, we can become intentionally receptive to, the health, the movement of eternity, something. So there's still a bit of us that is orienting, but when you're here, there's nothing, that disappears. So if you're in non-existence, you don't say, oh, let me become intentionally receptive to this, or let me orient to the health, or anything like that. There's really nothing. And when you're in that, you're not looking at it, you're in it, so there's nothing in you either. So you don't orient to anything, you don't wish for anything, there's not even room for the fear. There's just nothing. You really disappear. You feel like you don't exist. But then even that is too much because you don't feel.
And so that is like the whole state of the supernatural?
I don't know if I'd say that. I think you can't relate it to that diagram. That diagram's not,
It's a diagram.
yeah, it's not appropriate for this.
It's not something that you can linearly, it goes from here to
Yeah.
here to here to here. It's not something that's like that. But
Yeah.
the palpatory experience comes in phase 9, that's what the whole course is about. So that's
And Jim doesn't want that for phase 9 you need to be in practice since minimum 10 years, and in this learning process is minimum 10 years, because it takes that time to have the perceptual experiment grow, otherwise it's no sense to
I have maybe used then why does it come into existence? Why does it? I'm a bit stupid to ask that, but it feels like it's great there. So what does it have to?
But it doesn't feel great here. It doesn't feel like anything. It's like you're so neutral that even the word neutral doesn't make sense because there's no non-neutral.
Where does it go all the way down to human, which is so?
parce qu'elle a mangé la pomme. On a fait une connerie.
I don't know
Yeah.
if this is helpful, but I can sort of, I think I had experienced that nothingness when I was working with Bernie, but I didn't understand that then. Because I might have been misleading, but also because I just didn't, everything was so new that I just was like, wow, every experience was new. So in phase 9 though, I think I can express like getting there was more like the room was still, you moved through all the levels of stillness, that happened. And then it felt like there was really something rising from the ground that lifted everything up. It was like a lifting, and then almost like as if it was a cloud. This sounds very bizarre, but this is how it was. And then as if, and this isn't what I was thinking then, this is me looking back, right? So me looking back into it. It was as if everything lifted from the floor up and then just dissolved, like it just dissolved, as if everything, like all the atoms just came apart and everything, it was like the life substance was floating there. And then that's the feeling of it. That's how I experienced it.
And
But I can't tell you what happened.
And there's no stillness.
It's moving because it's very,
And
it's like,
and there's no silence. They don't exist yet.
But this is funny.
Yeah.
The suspension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all you feel is that suspension.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's as if everything is just suspended, and it's just, but it's not. I can't tell you what happened, or that's just how that. But because there's nothing. So there's nothing that happened.
Right.
Because it was just nothing. Yeah. But it's still something because it's not the void where there really was something. Yeah.
It even seems silly talking about it.
No, I
Because-
sound like really
I don't mean
crazy.
you personally, I mean,
Yeah.
it's because there's no sensory
Yeah.
hooks.
So how do you? I want to try to help them with the distinction between the non-existence and the void.
You know, that's why I didn't teach phase now yet. I will start in September.
Yeah.
But for me, the void is the void. So if you do it and 2 or 3 seconds, you have like you drop, you know, like Jacques Duval was. It's like you are going in a tube and you're just dropping.
Yeah.
So it's the void. You have no reference point, and it's not. That's really not fun. So. Like Anne will say, if you can wait 1 mile more, if you can wait 1 minute more, then something going to happen, and then the nothingness can.
Yeah.
It's another landscape,
Yeah.
but it can be very quick, so you don't recognize it because it's normal.
Yeah. Or it could be very long. You need
Yes,
to wait it.
the time.
Yeah.
It's time and space is one of our structure, but so the time can be totally no logic.
Would it be also fair to say that, like, in the void, you're aware of the fact that there's nothing there? Because you're searching for something, but in the
Yeah.
nothing, you're not searching.
Right. It
That-
goes blank.
That's a big difference.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you said it well before. Also, I can't remember what it was exactly you said, but the nothingness is a something, and the void there's
Nothing.
void. It's void.
It's void.
Yeah.
Like a vacuum.
It's empty.
Mm-hmm.
Completely empty.
I think it's an interface. The void is an interface.
But the
who
point.
allow to shape, to allow our perception.
Yeah. The point is, and what I learned from Vero as she was wanting to talk about this is the void. Is what you were describing as like the ultimate neutral, where you treat from, or where you're able to allow the deepest treatment to come through. Didn't you say that?
Remember,
Yeah.
the void allow to the neutral to maturate.
Allows the neutral to maturate.
Yes.
Yeah.
For
Yes.
me, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, there you have the choice. You say, okay, I run away, or I say, okay, I stay, because I know the house is there. I know I'm a guest here,
Yeah.
and there's something who can do something.
Yeah.
So it's a faith.
Yeah. But that maturation, that allowing the neutral to maturate, and having the courage to wait there to allow that neutral to maturate, I think that's the very important piece of that.
Don't react.
Yeah. Don't react.
Accept it.
Accept it. Yeah.
And then you come in another landscape where treatment is possible.
Yeah. So the void
After that,
is always a transition,
yeah, so that's how.
a transition space. And if we have the courage to wait through it, we'll end up in a different landscape that'll be completely different.
There won't be a therapeutic process in the void.
It won't be.
There won't be any therapeutic process
And
starting.
the void.
No.
And
So
the
there's-
nothingness, yes.
Yeah, the nothingness, yes. So So there's a couple things that the void, things to look out for. One we've talked about a lot is in the void there's a void, so it stimulates that fear, that uncertainty, our inner insecurities, all that we have to wait through. But after we wait through all that, and there's something that starts to happen, that new landscape is going to be completely different from where we were before. And sometimes the newness of that new landscape can be a little unnerving as well. So we're uncomfortable in that new landscape, right? And so sometimes we see that new landscape and it's so uncomfortable that we slip back into the void or somewhere else. So sometimes there's a little bit of a, until we can accept that new landscape. And sometimes that new landscape is so incredible that it stuns us. So it opens, and so what happens is the tide will just open up little bits of it to us, so we can just start to see it and acclimate to it. And so we're kind of on the edge of the void in the new landscape, right? And as we are able to sit in that new landscape and get comfortable in it, that's when a therapeutic process that's unique to that new landscape can begin to emerge. Yeah.
In the approach of that nothingness, my experience was that we can trust that we are all taking care of everybody else from that nothingness.
Yes.
We can, I don't think you can enter in it, but you approach it and you know that everybody else of us will be blessed by that.
Yeah, yeah. Because you can't go into it, just like Shana said, it kind of comes up and all of a sudden you're suspended in it. Whereas when you're in the void, you don't have that sense that everything's okay. Or you think everything's not okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good. It's like the nothingness, then it's like you realize there are nowhere to go. It's like it's the end of the road because there are nothing. So it's peaceful. It's reassuring.
Just like I was talking to some of you, they do these experiments with the desensitization chamber, right? So you go into this chamber where you're floating and there's absolutely no sound, not a glimmer of light or anything, right? And it either triggers acute anxiety or a complete transcendent peaceful experience, right? So when we're comfortable being in that void, then we transition into seeing what comes through there, that new space.
It's the best place to be rebalanced. Because in that place, we all have some footprint from some course, on the subtle potency. So me, it's in this landscape that I can resolve little by little some compression that I had on my, on different courses, on the subtle potency, because we are vulnerable, so there are some footprints sometimes, and you need a quality of neutrality to dissolve it.
The subtle potency?
Yes, when somebody had compressed your bird, phase 4 or something, takes years to have somebody who can be neutral enough to get that dissolved. Because you cannot have transmutation if the function cannot go back to neutral. So it's like a cleaning. I was like that when I was a child.
So in the Native American culture, they would teach their children, when everything goes silent, to listen intently. When seemingly everything stops, your senses are watching. Because it's those times where nothing's happening that they know that the door's opening for the possibility of something. So the void it's scary, but if we can just wait in it and and our senses actually awaken. It's awakening our senses. It's a place where we're actually being treated. We don't feel it. We don't feel like that at all because it's awful. But you're actually being treated so that you can enter into a new state of awareness. So. So Jim, I don't know if he reads it much anymore, but he used to often read this passage from Lorenz van der Post's book on patterns of renewal. Do you remember?
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's something to do with the void. And I've probably heard him read it a lot of times. I don't know how many, and after we read it, don't ask me for an interpretation. But it's just something to contemplate. And for a long time, I don't know why he was reading this. I mean, you get a sense of something, but I didn't have a sense of what it was he was pointing us towards until recently, when I reread it as I was kind of orienting myself to this meeting. So it's a story that's very real, Jim says. It's old and deep. It's from the Bushmen of Africa. The story is as follows. Once in the days of the early race, there was a man who captured a superb herd of cattle. They were stippled, all black and white. He loved them very much. Every day he took them out to graze, brought them home at night, put them in a shelter, and milked them in the morning. One morning, he found they had already been milked. Their udders, which had been sleek the night before, were wrinkled and dry. He thought, well, this is very extraordinary. I could not have looked after them very well yesterday. And he took them to better grazing. But again the next morning, he found they had already been milked. That night, bringing them back after a good feed, he sat up to watch. About midnight, he saw a cord come down from the heavens, and down the cord, hand over hand, came a young woman of the people of the stars. He saw them with their calabashes and baskets, whispering among themselves, creep into the shelter and start milking his cattle. He took up a stick and ran after them. Immediately they scattered and ran for the cord. They went up as fast as they could. He managed to catch one of them by the leg and pull her back. She was the loveliest of them all, and he married her. Their life would have been happy, except for one thing. She had with her, when he caught her, a tightly woven basket with a lid fitted tightly into its neck. She said to him, "There is only one thing I ask of you, and that is you never look into this basket without my permission." He promised. Every day she would go out to cultivate the fields as women do, and he went to look after the cattle and hunt. This went on for several months, but gradually the sight of the basket in the corner began to annoy him. One day, coming back for a drink of water in the middle of the day, when his wife was away in the fields, He saw the basket sitting there and said, well, really, this is too much. I'm going to have a look in it. He pulled up the lid of the basket and looked inside and began to laugh. In the evening, when his wife came back, and after one look at him, she knew what had happened. She said, "You've looked in the basket." He said, "Yes, I have." Then he added, "You silly, silly woman. The basket is empty." Then she said, "You saw nothing in the basket?" "No, nothing," he said. Thereupon, looking very sad, she turned her back on him and vanished into the sunset. The bushman telling the story added, "It didn't matter so much that he broke his promise not to look in the basket. What was so awful was that looking into the basket, he saw nothing in it. He couldn't see all the wonderful things she had brought from the stars for them both." So let's take a little break, and then we'll go to the lab.